At the library, my grandson called me a liar in front of everyone. Not in anger. That would have hurt less. He said it calmly, like he was correcting an old man who had embarrassed himself. Mom told me you make up stories to look important. The room went quiet. I was holding an old blue library card in my hand. I had only told him that his mother once sat in this same library, filling out college forms she was too scared to finish alone. My grandson looked at me like I was begging for credit. Then I looked at my daughter. She heard every word. She stood beside the donor table and said nothing. That silence hurt worse than the insult. Then the librarian walked out from the archive room holding a yellow envelope. 30 years old. She placed it on the table and said, "Before you call a man a liar in a library, you should know paper has a longer memory than pride." Welcome to Final Act Revenge. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. Please take care of your health while you listen. Because that envelope did not have my handwriting on it. It had my daughter's. My name is Connor Abraham. I am 63 years old, and I live in Florida, not far from a coast where the air always seems to carry salt, sunscreen, and has somebody else's second chance. My father was American, born not far from Tampa, the kind of man who could fix a boat motor with a screwdriver, a rag, and 3 words he would never say in church. My mother was Canadian, from Nova Scotia. She taught me to read, slowly, carefully, like every word had a small door inside it. She used to say, "Connor, if you can read the form, the world has a harder time fooling you." I believed her. Maybe that is why I spent most of my life around paper. I worked as a print shop technician for 31 years. School flyers, church bulletins, small business menus, scholarship packets, permission slips, funeral programs, wedding invitations for people who later divorced and came back for yard sale signs. Paper tells on people, if you keep it long enough. On Saturdays, I drove the old county bookmobile for Palmetto Key Public Library. That thing was hotter than a frying pan in July. The air conditioner worked when it felt patriotic, and the copier jammed so often I learned to pray in 3 languages, even though I only speak 2. But I loved it. We drove books to trailer parks, senior centers, migrant housing, and little neighborhoods where kids could see the library logo before they ever saw the inside of a college campus. To me, a library was never just shelves. It was proof that a person could walk in with empty hands and leave carrying a future. That was how I raised my daughter, Aubrey. Aubrey Vale now wears nice blazers, speaks at school events, and helps families navigate private academy admissions. But when she was 18, she was just a scared girl with sharp eyes, a second-hand backpack, and a dream she almost talked herself out of. We were broke then. Not dramatic broke, ordinary broke. The kind where you know exactly which bill can wait 5 days and which grocery store marks down bread after 6. Aubrey had grades good enough for college, but forms frightened her more than tests did. Application fee, scholarship essay, transcript request, bus schedule, books. Every piece had a cost. One evening, she sat at our kitchen table and pushed the folder away. "I can't do this, Dad." I was cleaning ink off my hands from the print shop. "Yes, you can." "No," she said. "People like us don't know how." That sentence hurt because I understood where she learned it. So I took her to Palmetto Key Public Library. Miriam Phelps was working the reference desk back then. Younger, but already with the eyes of a woman who could find a missing birth certificate, a college catalog, and a teenager's courage in the same afternoon. She pulled out scholarship binders. I printed forms after hours. I sat beside Aubrey until the library lights blinked for closing. I did not write her essays. I did not live her life for her. But I held the first door open long enough for her to stop running from it. Later, I sold my old pickup, told Aubrey the engine was bad. It was not that bad. I used the money for application fees, used textbooks, a testing fee, and a bus pass. I also let go of a certification program in Canada I had wanted for years. It might have raised my pay. might have changed my life a little. But Aubrey was standing at the edge of hers. So I chose. That is what parents do more often than children ever know. After she left for school, she wrote me a letter. I did not ask for it. I never waved it around. I kept quiet because I thought love did not need receipts. And for many years, I believed that silence was kindness. I did not know silence would one day give my grandson a lie to inherit. Success changed Aubrey slowly. That is how it usually happens. Not all at once. Not like a door slamming. More like a photograph fading in reverse, until the parts she wanted people to see became sharper, and the parts that made her uncomfortable disappeared into the background. When she graduated, I cried in the parking lot, not during the ceremony. I had enough pride left to stand there like a normal man while she crossed that stage. But afterward, when she was busy taking pictures with friends, I went behind a palm tree near the visitor lot and wiped my face with a napkin from the glove box. I thought about the bookmobile, the late nights, the pickup I never replaced, the Canada program I let go of. And I thought, it was worth it, every bit of it. For a while, Aubrey remembered too. She would call and say, "Dad, I don't know how you did all that." I would tell her, "You did the hard part," and I meant it. A parent can hold a door open, but the child still has to walk through with trembling legs. Then the years got cleaner around her. Private school offices, admissions panels, parents in pressed linen asking how to make their children sound exceptional without sounding desperate. Aubrey learned that world well. She learned which words made people trust her: strategy, positioning, narrative, potential. She became good at helping families shape stories, maybe too good. Because somewhere along the way, she started shaping her own. At first, it was small. If someone asked about college, she said, "I figured things out early." That was not entirely false. Then it became, "I handled most of it on my own." That was thinner. Then one afternoon, at a birthday lunch for Wyatt when he was about 11, I heard her say to another mother, "I didn't really have anyone guiding me. I had to become my own plan." I looked at her. She saw me hear it. For 1 second, her face changed. Then she looked away. That was the beginning of a new version of our family. In that version, I was not cruel, not absent, not even bad. I was something easier to dismiss. A well-meaning old man, a man who exaggerated, a man who remembered himself as more useful than he had been. Sienna Vale helped polish that version. Sienna was Aubrey's wife and business partner, a branding coach with a voice smooth enough to make selfishness sound like self-care. She was not a villain in the loud way. She never pointed at me and said, "Erase him." She said softer things, more dangerous things. People respect a clean origin story. Clients want confidence, not old struggle. You don't owe everyone the messy version. Aubrey listened. Wyatt listened too. Children always do, even when adults pretend they are not teaching. By the time my grandson was in high school, he had learned to hear my stories through his mother's embarrassment. If I mentioned the print shop, he smiled politely. If I mentioned the bookmobile, he checked his phone. If I said his mother had been brave when she applied to college, he stiffened like I had insulted her. Once, I told him, "Your mother worked hard, but she did not walk in alone." He answered without looking up, "Mom said she did." I could have corrected him. I should have, maybe, but I heard Aubrey in the kitchen that day, washing dishes too loudly, waiting to see what I would do. So I let it pass. That is one of the mistakes older parents make. We mistake silence for peace because we are tired of fighting for a place in stories we helped build. I still tried with Wyatt. I mailed him books. I fixed an old printer for his school project. I invited him to volunteer at Palmetto Key Public Library, telling him it would look good on college applications and might even teach him something useful. He came twice. The first time, he sorted donated paperbacks like they had personally offended him. The second time, he asked if libraries were still relevant. Miriam Phelps overheard that and said, Young man, the minute people stop needing help with form, grief, taxes, homework, and printer jams, I'll retire twice. I laughed. Wyatt did not. But he remembered her. Everyone did. Miriam had run that library before the county started using words like budget efficiency and service restructuring. Even retired, she kept the archive room alive. She knew which drawer held old photos, which box held community letters, and which families had rewritten themselves too many times. When Palmetto Key announced Scholarship Night, Aubrey's name appeared on the speaker list. Aubrey Vale, admissions consultant. Topic: Building Your Future Without Excuses. That title sat wrong in my chest, not because I disliked her success, I never did. I disliked the price of her version. Miriam saw the flyer too. I was at the copier, trying to clear another jam, when she walked past with a folder under her arm. "What is that?" I asked. "Insurance," she said. I raised an eyebrow. She looked toward Aubrey's name on the flyer. "If she tells that story in this building," Miriam said, "the old file is coming out with her." I did not ask what file. Maybe some part of me already knew. Scholarship Night always made the library feel younger. The old carpet still smelled faintly of dust and copier toner, and the ceiling lights still hummed like they had been installed during a decade nobody wanted to admit remembering. But that evening, the community room was full of nervous hope. Students leaned over laptops. Parents held folders with too many tabs. Volunteers passed out FAFSA checklists, scholarship deadlines, essay prompts, and little yellow sticky notes that said things like, "Ask for help early." I liked that one. Ask for help early. If more families believed that, half the shame in this world would lose its job. I arrived before the crowd. Old habit. A man who worked around machines learns that most problems begin before people notice the noise. I wore my cleanest short-sleeved shirt. The blue one Aubrey once said made me look like a retired school principal who fixed his own lawnmower. I took that as a compliment. In my canvas bag, I carried 3 black pens, reading glasses, a stack of essay checklists, 1 worn paperback dictionary, and an old blue-green library card. Aubrey's first card. I do not know why I brought it that night. Maybe memory gets nervous before truth arrives. Darlene Moss, the library director, was arranging folding chairs near the front. "Connor," she said, "thank heaven. Table 3 is already asking about scholarship essays." "That table always panics first," I said. She laughed, but only halfway. Darlene had been fighting budget cuts all year. The library needed donors, volunteers, and enough good publicity to remind the county that poor kids still needed printers. I sat at table 3 with a girl named Lena Ortiz. She was trying to write an essay about being the first person in her family to attend college, but every sentence sounded like it had been built by a committee. She sighed. "I want it to sound impressive." "Start by making it honest," I told her. "Impressive can put on shoes later." She looked at me. Then she smiled and started again. That was why I came. Not for applause, not for old stories. For that small moment when a young person realizes a form is not a locked gate. It is just paper waiting for someone patient enough to explain it. Then Aubrey walked in. She looked polished, as always. Cream blazer, neat folder, hair smooth enough to make humidity feel defeated. Wyatt came beside her, taller than the last time I had seen him, with that teenage look of being both bored and ready to judge a room. Sienna followed them, holding a phone and scanning the place like she was deciding which corners would photograph well. Aubrey saw me at the volunteer table. Her smile tightened, not vanished, just tightened. "Dad," she said. "Aubrey." I stood. For 1 second, I wanted to hug her like I used to when she came home from school exhausted and pretending not to be scared. But she leaned in for the kind of quick cheek kiss people give when others are watching. So I accepted that. Wyatt nodded at me. "Grandpa." "Wyatt, ready for college forms?" He glanced at Aubrey. Mom says we already have a consultant. I looked at my daughter. She gave a little laugh, light as tissue. Dad means well. There it was. 4 small words, kind enough to pass, sharp enough to cut. I sat back down slowly. Across the room, Miriam Phelps stood near the archive desk. She saw it. Of course she did. Librarians notice when people shelve each other incorrectly. Ellis Benton arrived a few minutes later, wearing a pale jacket and the smile of a man who had donated just enough money to expect his name mentioned twice. He shook Aubrey's hand near the donor table. I've heard wonderful things, he said. A real self-made success story. Aubrey smiled. Thank you. That means a lot. She did not look at me. I looked down at the old library card in my hand. The plastic edge was cracked. Her name had faded, but not enough. Aubrey Vale, card issued 30 years ago, back when she needed this place more than she wanted anyone to know. Sienna leaned toward Aubrey and said quietly, though not quietly enough, remember your audience. Parents want confidence, not old struggle. I turned my face toward the scholarship forms and pretended to mark something with my pen. Pretending is not only for liars. Sometimes old men pretend because reacting would cost too much. Wyatt wandered over while Aubrey prepared near the podium. He noticed the card. Is that Mom's? Yes. Why do you have it? I rubbed my thumb over the faded name. Because this little card helped your mother walk through her first real door. His eyes narrowed slightly. What does that mean? I should have been careful. Maybe I was tired of careful. Your mother once sat right here, I said, tapping the table gently. She had college forms spread out in front of her and nearly quit before she finished the first page. Wyatt looked toward Aubrey. She never told me that. No, I said. I suppose she didn't. He looked back at the card in my hand. Around us, the room kept moving. Papers slid across tables. Parents asked questions. Darlene tested the microphone. Aubrey stood near the front, holding her folder like it had the whole room trained. Wyatt's voice dropped. Mom says you remember things wrong. I looked at him then, really looked. He was not trying to be cruel yet. He was repeating the map he had been handed. She says you make stories bigger, he added, especially about helping her. From the archive desk, Miriam's head lifted. I saw Aubrey look over too. She heard. She knew. And still, she turned one page in her folder like the sound of paper could cover 30 years. I held the old blue card a little tighter. Wyatt looked at it, then at me, waiting for me to defend myself against a story his mother had built before he was old enough to question it. The room had not gone quiet yet, but I could feel it coming. Wyatt looked at the old blue library card in my hand and asked, why do you keep carrying proof of a story Mom says never happened? Wyatt's question sat between us like a book dropped on a church floor. Why do you keep carrying proof of a story Mom says never happened? I looked at the old blue library card in my hand. Aubrey's name was faded, but still readable. 30 years can dull ink. It does not always dull pain. I said, because some stories matter even when people stop telling them. Wyatt frowned. That doesn't answer me. It does, I said, just not the way you want. A few heads turned at the next table. Lena Ortiz stopped typing. Darlene Moss looked over from the microphone stand. Aubrey stood near the podium, holding her folder tight against her ribs. She heard us. I know she did. A father knows when his child is pretending not to listen. Wyatt looked back at his mother, then at me. You said Mom sat here filling out forms. She did. You said she was scared. She was. You said you helped her. I sat with her. I drove her. I printed what she needed. Miriam helped find the forms. Your mother did the work. His face hardened. That answer should have been balanced enough. It was not, because he had been taught that even balance was manipulation if it came from me. That's not what Mom says. I kept my voice low. What does your mother say? Wyatt lifted his chin. She says you make everything about yourself. The room changed. Not loudly, just enough. A volunteer stopped sorting pencils. Travis Keene, Wyatt's friend from school, looked up from the sign-in table. Ellis Benton turned slightly in his chair, interested now in the way people become interested when someone else's dignity starts leaking onto the floor. Wyatt continued. She says, "You make up stories to look important." There it was, the line from the thumbnail of my memory. Only when you hear it from a boy you used to push on a swing, it does not feel like a line. It feels like a door closing. I looked at Aubrey. She did not move, not one step, not one word. Her mouth parted a little, then closed again. Her eyes flicked toward Ellis Benton, toward Sienna, toward the parents near the front rows. Image first, father second, maybe father last. I waited. I gave her the chance a parent gives a child even after the child has hurt him. Say something, Aubrey. Tell him. Tell him I did not invent your fear. Tell him I did not invent those nights. Tell him I did not invent myself into your life. But all she said was, "Dad, not here." A small sentence, soft voice, public knife. I felt something in my chest go still. "Where would you like truth to stand, Aubrey?" I asked. "Somewhere less public than your lie?" A few people drew breath. Sienna stepped closer to Aubrey. "Connor, this is not appropriate." I looked at her. "No, it is not. That is why it should have been stopped years ago." Wyatt's face reddened. He was embarrassed now, and embarrassment makes young people cruel because they have not learned any other armor. "You weren't there for her," he said. "You just tell people you were." The word liar had hurt. That sentence hurt worse, because it was not only an accusation, it was inheritance. A lie my daughter had planted had finally grown tall enough to speak in her son's voice. Ellis Benton gave a small, polished cough from the front row. "Well," he said, smiling like a man sprinkling sugar over vinegar, "at our age, memory likes to decorate itself." A few people gave nervous little laughs, not because it was funny, because people laugh when they want discomfort to choose someone else. I looked down at the library card. My thumb covered Aubrey's last name. The word liar hurt less coming from a child than silence did coming from my daughter. Before I tell you what was inside that yellow envelope, let me ask you something. If your own grandchild called you a liar in public because your child had spent years rewriting your sacrifice, would you stay quiet to protect the family, or would you let the room hear the truth? Tell me honestly what you would have done, because standing there, I still did not want to destroy Aubrey. That is the part people miss about fathers. Even when our children hurt us, some corner of us still reaches for the version of them that once needed help tying shoes. I looked at Wyatt again. "You are 16, I said. "Old enough to speak. Not always old enough to know whose words you are carrying." He flinched. Good. Not because I wanted to wound him, because I wanted him to feel the weight before it became permanent. Aubrey finally moved. One step. "Wyatt," she said. I turned to her. Here it comes, I thought. At last. But she only said, "Let's not do this during the event." Miriam Phelps's voice came from the archive doorway. "No, Aubrey. This is exactly the kind of event where truth should not need an appointment." The room turned. Miriam walked slowly, holding a yellow envelope in both hands. She did not hurry. Librarians understand timing better than most actors. The envelope was old, the edges soft, the paper yellowed from years in a box where Florida humidity had done its quiet work. Adele Raines stood behind her, nervous, carrying a folder from the archive room. Miriam came to my table and placed the envelope beside the old library card. Then she looked at Wyatt. "Young man, libraries keep records for the days families forget how to tell the truth." Wyatt stared at the envelope. "What is that?" Miriam tapped the front gently. "A personal letter kept in the community memory box. Not a library record, not private paperwork stolen from anyone. A letter placed here by the person who wrote it, with instructions. Sienna's face tightened. Aubrey went pale. That was when I knew she recognized it. I had not seen that envelope in years, maybe decades, but Aubrey had. Miriam turned it so Wyatt could read the faded words on the front. Hold for Connor Abraham if I ever forget to thank him properly. The room was silent now, really silent. Even the copier in the hallway seemed to choose that moment not to jam. Wyatt read the words once, then again. His confidence wavered. Who wrote that? Miriam did not answer immediately. She looked at Aubrey. Aubrey looked at the floor. And that told the room enough. I stared at the handwriting, the slant, the narrow loops, the way the capital seemed like it was trying not to take up space. My daughter's handwriting at 18. I remembered it from scholarship forms, grocery lists, notes taped to the fridge. My throat tightened. Not because the envelope proved me right, because it proved she had once known. She had known exactly what I gave. She had known enough to leave a letter in case pride ever buried gratitude. Wyatt looked at me. For the first time that night, he did not look angry. He looked unsure. Grandpa? I picked up the envelope, then set it back down. My hand was not steady enough. It was not my handwriting on that yellow envelope, I said. Then I looked at Aubrey. It was my daughter's. Miriam did not open the yellow envelope in the middle of the room. That mattered. She was not trying to make a show of my daughter. She was trying to stop a lie from becoming permanent. There are students here, she said, looking at Darlene Moss. Let's step into the archive room. Darlene nodded, relieved to have something practical to do. Aubrey did not move. Neither did Wyatt. Sienna leaned toward her and whispered, You don't have to participate in this. Miriam heard her. Librarians hear everything. No one is being forced, Miriam said. But a boy called his grandfather a liar in a public library. If the truth is nearby, I believe it deserves a chair. That was Miriam Phelps. Soft shoes, sharp spine. We walked past the reference desk and into the archive room, a small space behind the community display cases. It smelled like old paper, dust, cardboard, and time. There were gray filing cabinets along one wall. A microfilm machine sat in the corner under a plastic cover. Old donation ledgers filled 2 shelves. A small fan clicked every few seconds, like it had a secret and could not decide whether to tell it. Adele Raines placed a folder on the table. Miriam set the yellow envelope beside it. Wyatt stood across from me, arms folded, but not as tightly as before. Aubrey stood near the door. That told me something. A person who wants truth usually steps closer. A person who fears it stays near the exit. This is private, Aubrey said. Miriam looked at her. So was the truth, until your son was taught to insult it in public. Aubrey's face tightened. Sienna stepped in. That's unfair. No, Miriam said. Unfair is letting a child inherit a story that was edited to protect an adult's pride. Nobody answered that. Not even Ellis Benton, who had followed us in with the careful curiosity of a donor who wanted to know whether scandal would affect the evening's funding pitch. Miriam put on her reading glasses. Then she did something I respected. She did not open the letter first. She opened the folder. Before anyone reads anything emotional, she said, let's start with plain records. She slid an old blue-green card across the table. Aubrey's first library card, the twin to the one I had carried. Wyatt looked at it. That could just mean she had a library card. It does, Miriam said. And this shows when she used it. Adele placed a photocopied sign-in sheet beside the card. Scholarship Workshop. Palmetto Key Public Library. Aubrey Vale. Connor Abraham. My old signature sat there too, heavier than I remembered. Wyatt leaned forward despite himself. Mom, is that your signature? Aubrey's voice was quiet. It was a long time ago. That phrase again, as if time were acid. as if enough years could dissolve fact into inconvenience. Miriam placed another paper down. This is a receipt copy from our old copier log, application packet printing, transcript copies, scholarship mailing labels. Sienna gave a small laugh without humor. Old paperwork doesn't explain everything. No, Miriam said, but it explains enough to stop a boy from calling his grandfather a liar. Wyatt looked at me then. Not kindly, not yet, but with less certainty. That is how truth enters some people, not like a sunrise, like a crack under a locked door. Adele uncovered the microfilm machine and fed in an old reel. The screen flickered, jumped, then settled into a grainy library newsletter from 3 decades before. There we were, Aubrey and me beside the old bookmobile. She had a backpack over one shoulder and looked like she wanted to disappear from the photograph. I stood behind her, one hand on a stack of college catalogs, smiling like a fool because I was proud and too tired to hide it. Miriam pointed to the caption. Local student prepares scholarship applications with help from library volunteers and family. Wyatt read it. His mouth moved slightly around the words. Family. Help. Those 2 words had been strangers in the version he knew. Aubrey stared at the screen. Something moved across her face. Not denial. Memory. That was worse for her. Because memory does not ask permission before coming back. I said, Your mother hated that picture. Wyatt looked at me. Why? She thought she looked poor. Aubrey closed her eyes. I wished I had not said it. Then I knew I had to. She did not look poor to me, I said. She looked scared and brave. Wyatt swallowed. Still, he fought it. Maybe you helped with some papers. That doesn't mean Mom lied. No, I said. It means you should slow down before deciding who did. He looked away. Miriam took the yellow envelope now. The room seemed to lean toward it. Aubrey said, Miriam, please. Miriam paused. Then she looked at my daughter with more sadness than anger. I kept this because you asked me to. Aubrey's lips parted. You remember that? I remember teenagers who are afraid the world will find out they need help, Miriam said. I remember them very well. She turned the envelope so everyone could see the front again. Hold for Connor Abraham if I ever forget to thank him properly. Wyatt read it silently. Sienna looked uncomfortable now. Ellis Benton's polished expression had begun to lose its shine. Miriam opened the envelope carefully, not like she was opening evidence, but like she was opening something that had once been alive. Inside was a folded letter. The paper had yellowed. The creases were soft. Miriam did not read it aloud yet. She unfolded only the first page and placed it on the table, turning it toward Wyatt. Read the first line, she said. Wyatt hesitated. Aubrey whispered, Wyatt, but he was 16, and 16-year-olds may be cruel, but they are also curious when the floor shifts under them. He leaned over the page. Then he read, Dad, if I ever act like I did this alone, please forgive me. The room went still. Not silent. Still. There is a difference. Silence is absence of sound. Stillness is when every person in a room understands that something has just arrived and cannot be sent back. Wyatt looked up at his mother. Aubrey did not speak. He looked at me. For the first time that night, he did not look like a boy defending a story. He looked like a boy losing one. I did not feel victorious. I felt old, a little sad, and more tired than I wanted anyone to see. Miriam touched the edge of the letter. There is more, she said. Wyatt's voice was smaller now. More about what? Miriam looked at Aubrey, then at me. About what his grandfather gave up so his mother could begin. Wyatt read the first line of his mother's letter, and for the first time that night, he stopped looking at me like I was the one who had lied. Miriam said there was more. Nobody in that archive room wanted her to be right. Not Wyatt, not Aubrey, not Sienna, not even me. Because sometimes the first piece of truth does not free you. It only unlocks the door to the room where the rest of it has been waiting. Wyatt stood over the letter, one hand on the table, eyes fixed on the first line. Dad, if I ever act like I did this alone, please forgive me. He read it again, without moving his lips. Aubrey looked like she wanted to reach across the table and fold the paper back into the past. Miriam noticed. Of course she did. Connor, she asked gently, do you want me to read it? I looked at Aubrey. My daughter was 41 years old, polished, careful, successful enough to sell confidence to frightened parents for a living. But standing there in the archive room, she looked 18 again, scared, cornered by her own handwriting. No, I said. It was written by her. Aubrey's eyes lifted to mine. I did not say it cruelly. I said it because the letter had never really belonged to me. It belonged to the girl she used to be, and to the boy she had taught to misunderstand that girl. Let her decide how much truth she can stand, I said. Aubrey did not touch the page, so Wyatt did. He picked it up slowly, as if the paper might burn him. His voice came out smaller than before. Dad, I know you sold the pickup. He stopped, looked at his mother. You sold a truck! I said nothing. Aubrey closed her eyes. Wyatt kept reading. I know you said the engine was bad, but I saw the receipt for my application fees and books. The old fan clicked in the corner. Once, twice. Nobody breathed normally. Wyatt read the next line. I know you stayed after your print shop shift to run copies because I was too embarrassed to ask the school counselor. His fingers tightened on the paper. He looked at me then. Not with apology yet. That would come later, if it came at all. He looked at me with confusion. The kind that arrives when a child realizes adults can lie by subtraction. Adele Raines slid another page from the folder. Here, she said softly. It was a photocopy of an old print shop log. I recognized my own handwriting. Late print run, college applications, 3 copies, no charge. Wyatt stared at it. Sienna folded her arms. This still doesn't mean he did everything. I looked at her. You're right. That surprised her. I turned to Wyatt. Your mother did the work. She wrote the essays. She earned her grades. She walked into rooms that scared her. Don't take that from her. Aubrey's face flickered. Maybe she expected accusation. I had none left to spend. But she did not walk in alone, I said. Wyatt looked back at the letter. He read again. You told me not to be ashamed of needing help, but I am. I hate that we count groceries. I hate that I know when rent is due. I hate that rich girls at school talk about college like it's a vacation plan, and I'm afraid to ask how much the application costs. His voice cracked on the last word. He cleared his throat fast. Too fast. Trying to stay 16 and hard. I knew that trick. Men start practicing it young. Aubrey whispered, Wyatt, stop. He did not. For once, he disobeyed the story she had given him. I'm writing this because Miriam said gratitude is easier to keep when you put it somewhere safe. If I ever tell people I did this alone, please forgive me. I only say that when I'm scared, they'll know how poor we were. The room held still around that sentence. There it was. The whole wound. Not lack of love, not lack of memory. Shame. Shame had taken my daughter's gratitude and taught it to wear a nicer coat. Aubrey wiped under one eye, angry at the tear for showing up. I was 18, she said. Miriam nodded. Yes. Then she leaned forward, not unkindly. And 18-year-old you told the truth more bravely than 41-year-old you did tonight. Sienna's mouth tightened. Ellis Benton looked down at his shoes. Wyatt kept reading, quieter now. I know about Canada too. My stomach shifted. I had forgotten that line, or maybe I had chosen not to remember it. Wyatt looked up. What Canada? Aubrey's face changed. She had known. All these years I wondered if she understood what I gave up. Apparently she had understood enough to write it down. I took my glasses off and rubbed the bridge of my nose. It was just a certification program, I said. Miriam's eyes softened. It was more than just. I shrugged. Old men do that when the truth is too exposed. It might have helped me move up at the shop, might not have. Your grandmother's family was in Nova Scotia. I thought about going for 6 months. Wyatt stared at me. But you didn't. No. Because of Mom? Aubrey answered before I could. Because of me. Her voice was barely above a whisper. That was the first clean truth she had given the room. Wyatt read the next line. You said Canada could wait. I knew it couldn't. I knew you spent that money on my testing fee, the bus pass, and the books. I remembered the envelope of cash, the bus station, the used textbook store where Aubrey had run her fingers over a biology book like it was made of glass. I remembered telling myself I would try Canada the next year, then the next. Then, life did what life does. It became years. Wyatt looked at me. You gave that up for Mom? I gave up a possibility, I said. She became one. That sentence seemed to hurt Aubrey more than anger would have. She covered her mouth. For a moment, I saw the girl in the library again, clutching a pencil, terrified of forms, pretending she was annoyed because fear embarrassed her. I loved that girl. I still loved the woman who had hurt me. That is, the terrible, complicated math of being a parent. Wyatt lowered the letter. Why didn't you tell me? I looked at Aubrey. Because she asked me not to without saying it. Because every time I came close, her face tightened like old poverty was a stain I was dragging into her clean house. Because I wanted Sunday dinners more than I wanted credit. Because grandparents make bargains with silence when they are afraid access to a child might be taken away. But I did not say all of that to Wyatt. Not yet. I said, because I thought your mother would, when she was ready. Aubrey looked down. Ready had taken 30 years, and still needed a librarian. Wyatt's eyes filled, but he blinked it back with anger. So everything she told me was just wrong? Aubrey finally spoke. No. The word came out too sharp, then softer. No, not everything. She stepped toward him. I did work hard, Wyatt. I know, he said. But that's not what I asked. He looked older suddenly, not grown, just injured into a new kind of seeing. Aubrey had no answer. Miriam folded the other papers neatly but left the letter open on the table. She knew not to close a truth before everyone had seen its shape. I reached for the old blue library card and placed it beside the letter. A card, a letter, a few receipts, small things. Enough to hold up a history my daughter had spent years sanding smooth. Wyatt stared at them, then at me. Grandpa, did you keep all this just in case? No, I said. I kept none of it to win. Miriam kept the envelope because your mother asked her to. I kept the card because I missed the girl who used it. That finally broke something in Aubrey's face. Not completely, but enough for me to see grief behind pride. Outside the archive room, the microphone squealed. Darlene's voice came faintly through the wall, asking everyone to take their seats for the next speaker. Aubrey's next speaker. Her folder was still under her arm. Building your future without excuses. Wyatt looked at that folder, then at the letter. He asked me why I never told him the truth, and all I could do was look at Aubrey and say, because I thought your mother would, when she was ready. The microphone squealed outside the archive room, just once. A thin, sharp sound that made everyone flinch a little. Then Darlene's voice came through the wall. Good evening, everyone. If you'll take your seats, we'll continue with our next speaker shortly. Our next speaker. Aubrey. My daughter stood there with two histories in the same room. One in her folder, one on the table. The folder was clean. The letter was not. The folder had sharp corners, printed pages, professional language, and the kind of confidence people pay consultants to borrow. The letter had old creases, faded ink, and a girl's fear pressed into every line. Wyatt looked from one to the other. He was trying to rebuild his world with pieces that no longer fit. I knew that look. I had seen it in adults learning to read at 58, staring at a sentence they had pretended to understand for 30 years. Truth does not always arrive like a gift. Sometimes it arrives like embarrassment with better lighting. Wyatt set the letter down. His voice came out harder than his face. "So what?" Aubrey looked at him. "What?" "So, he helped you," Wyatt said. "Maybe he helped a lot, but why keep all this?" He looked at me now. "You kept old cards, old receipts, old pictures. For what? To prove people owe you?" The words hit me in a place I had not guarded. Not because they were new, because they were young. A child does not invent that kind of suspicion by himself. Someone teaches him that gratitude is a trap, that proof of love is a bill waiting to be collected. Aubrey whispered, "Wyatt, stop." But still, she did not say the one thing that could have stopped him. She did not say, "Your grandfather helped me." She did not say, "I let you believe wrong." She did not say, "This is my shame, not his." She only said, "Stop." That was not truth. That was damage control. Ellis Benton cleared his throat near the filing cabinets. "I'm sure family memories become complicated over time," he said. "People remember what they need to remember." I turned to him slowly. "No, Mr. Benton. Some of us remember what others needed us to forget." His polite smile disappeared. Good. I was tired of polite people making cruelty sound balanced. Sienna stepped closer to Aubrey, voice low, but not low enough. "You do not have to let them turn your life into a public confession." Aubrey held her folder tighter. I saw her reach for that sentence like a railing, because it gave her permission to retreat into the version where she was being attacked, not corrected. I looked at my daughter. For a moment, I saw all of her at once. The frightened girl in the library, the young woman calling from college, trying not to cry because she had passed her first exam, the polished consultant who taught parents how to package ambition, the mother who had let her son look at me with contempt because contempt was easier than gratitude. And I was tired. Not angry in the hot way, tired in the old way. The kind of tired that makes a man wonder if peace is worth more than being understood. I reached for the old blue library card. "I'm going back to the room," I said. Miriam's eyes narrowed. "Connor, I won't make my daughter small in the room where she once tried to become bigger." Aubrey's face changed. Shame, relief, both. That hurt too, because part of her wanted me to leave, not because she hated me, because my staying meant she had to choose. Wyatt looked confused. "You're just leaving?" "I am not interested in winning a trial against my own child. That's not what this is." "No," I said. "It is worse. This is a family finally noticing the cost of its favorite story." I started toward the door. Miriam stepped into my path. She was a small woman, smaller than me by plenty. But the way she stood there reminded me of every librarian who had ever protected a quiet room from foolishness. She placed one hand on the yellow envelope. "Connor," she said, "this one is not yours to hide anymore." I stopped. Her voice softened. "You protected her when she was 18. That was love. But protecting the lie now will not protect Wyatt. It will teach him to pass it on." I looked at my grandson. He was still standing behind anger, but anger had cracks in it now. Through them, I could see fear. He was afraid his mother had lied. He was afraid he had been cruel for no reason. He was afraid the adult he trusted most had handed him a weapon and called it truth. And suddenly, I understood something I had avoided for years. My silence had not stayed silent. It had spoken through Aubrey, then through Wyatt. For 30 years, I protected my daughter from the shame of needing me. That night, I realized I had also protected the lie she gave my grandson. I sat back down, slowly, not because I wanted revenge, because a child was in the room, and he deserved an inheritance better than pride. Aubrey looked at me. "Dad," I raised one hand, "no more soft exits." Her mouth trembled. Sienna took a breath like she wanted to object, but Miriam looked at her once, and she wisely saved the air. Outside, Darlene's voice came again. "Our next speaker, Aubrey Vale, will share her journey in admissions and education." Aubrey closed her eyes. Her journey. That was the word people used when they wanted pain to sound marketable. Darlene appeared at the archive room doorway then, wearing the tight smile of a director trying to keep an event from turning into local history. "Aubrey," she said quietly, "we need you at the podium. Your speech is next." Aubrey nodded, but did not move. Her folder slipped slightly in her hands. A page slid free and landed near the edge of the table. Wyatt picked it up before she could. "Wyatt," Aubrey said sharply, but he was already reading. The title sat at the top in clean, bold letters. "Building My Future with No Help." He stared at it. Then he read the first line underneath. "When I was 18, no one opened doors for me. I learned early that I had to become my own rescue." The archive room went silent again. Not the stillness of discovery this time, the stillness of motive. I looked at Aubrey. She looked away. And there it was. Not just a private lie, a prepared one, printed, practiced, ready to walk out into a room full of students who needed help and tell them that needing help was something successful people edited out later. Wyatt's voice was low. "Mom, were you going to say this?" Aubrey reached for the page. He pulled it back. "Were you?" She did not answer. That answer was louder than anything she could have said. Miriam looked at the speech page, then at the yellow envelope. "2 documents," she said. "Same building, different women." Ellis Benton shifted uncomfortably. Sienna whispered, "This is getting out of hand." "No," I said, looking at the speech title in my grandson's hand. "For the first time tonight, it is getting into the right hands." Aubrey looked at me then. Her eyes were wet, but her chin was still raised. Pride does not die quickly. Sometimes it has to be embarrassed before it becomes honest. Darlene waited at the door. The community room waited beyond her. Parents, students, donors, volunteers. The same room where Wyatt had called me a liar. The same room where Aubrey was supposed to tell everyone she had rescued herself. I looked at my daughter's folder, then at the letter she wrote at 18. And I finally understood why my daughter had let my grandson call me a liar. For a moment, nobody moved. The page in Wyatt's hand seemed louder than the microphone outside. "Building My Future with No Help." That title sat there in clean black letters, pretending it had not just insulted every late night, every printed form, every bus pass, every quiet sacrifice that had carried my daughter toward the life she now sold to other people. Aubrey reached for the page again. "Wyatt, give me that." He did not. He looked at her like he was seeing 2 mothers at once. The one who packed his lunches, helped him study, corrected his posture before school pictures, and the one who had taught him to laugh at an old man for remembering the truth. "Were you going to say this?" he asked. Aubrey's face tightened. "It's a speech." "That's not what I asked." Sienna stepped in quickly. "Wyatt, speeches are simplified. People don't put every private detail into a professional presentation." Miriam Phelps gave her a look over the top of her glasses. "Libraries are a poor place to confuse branding with truth." Sienna's mouth closed. "Good." Aubrey finally spoke. "I earned my career." Her voice shook, but the pride was still there, holding itself upright with both hands. I nodded. "Yes, you did." That surprised her. Maybe she expected me to take everything from her because she had taken something from me. But that was never what I wanted. "You earned your grades," I said. "You wrote your essays. You sat through interviews. You worked hard when nobody could do the work for you." Her eyes filled. Then why are you doing this? Because hard work and help are not enemies. The archive room stayed quiet. Even Wyatt looked down at that line again. No one opened doors for me. I learned early that I had to become my own rescue. I pointed at the page. That sentence does not make you strong, Aubrey. It makes everyone who helped you disappear. She breathed in sharply. I saw anger come first. Then shame behind it. Then fear behind both. That was the real thing. Fear. Not cruelty, not even ambition. Fear, wearing a good blazer. Aubrey looked toward the community room, where parents and students were waiting for her to speak. You don't understand what those rooms are like, she said. Parents come to me because they want certainty. They want someone polished, someone who knows the system. They don't want to hear that I was once a scared girl who couldn't afford application fees. I said nothing, so she kept going. When you sit across from people who can pay $10,000 to position their child for private school, you learn quickly what version of yourself makes them trust you. That may be true, I said, but it does not explain why your son thought I was a liar. Her face broke a little. Not enough, but a little. Wyatt looked at her. You told me he exaggerated. Aubrey turned toward him. I told myself he exaggerated. That's not the same thing. No, she whispered. It isn't. He held up the speech page. You were going to tell everyone no one opened doors for you. Aubrey's lips trembled. I spent 20 years trying not to look like the girl who needed help. There it was, the sentence under every other sentence. The wound she had built a business around, the shame she had dressed up as independence, the fear she had passed to her son like an heirloom. I stepped closer, not angry now, just tired. You were not weak because you needed help, I said. You became cruel when you taught your son to mock the hand that helped you. Wyatt looked at me quickly. The words hurt him too. They should have. Truth is not always gentle just because it is deserved. Ellis Benton shifted beside the filing cabinet. This evening is about students, he said, trying to recover some donor room dignity. Perhaps this family discussion should continue elsewhere. I turned to him. That is exactly why this matters. Students should not be taught that needing help is something to erase after they succeed. Miriam nodded once. Darlene Moss stood in the doorway, pale but listening. Outside, the audience murmured softly. Someone laughed at something unrelated. A chair scraped. Life has a rude habit of continuing while a family changes shape. Aubrey looked at the folder in her hands, then at the yellow envelope, then at me. What do you want me to do? Miriam placed the old letter gently on top of the speech draft. You can walk to that podium and tell the version that protects your image, she said. Or you can tell the version that protects your son from inheriting your shame. Aubrey closed her eyes. Sienna whispered, Aubrey, think carefully. Aubrey opened them again. I have been thinking carefully for 30 years, she said. That silenced Sienna. For the first time that night, my daughter sounded less like a consultant and more like the girl who once sat at a library table with a pencil in her hand, pretending she was not terrified. She looked at me. Dad, if I tell them, people will think I built my career on a lie. I answered softly. No, they will think you finally stopped building it on one. Her shoulders fell, not dramatically, just enough for me to see the weight. Wyatt was still holding the speech page, but his hand had lowered now. He looked younger. Pain can do that. It can make a 16-year-old boy remember he is still someone's child. I called him a liar, he said. No one corrected him. He needed to hear himself say it. Aubrey looked at him. I know. You let me. Her face twisted. Yes. That one word did more than all her explanations. Wyatt stepped back like it had physically touched him. I wanted to comfort him. I did. But some lessons need a few seconds to hurt before they can teach. Darlene cleared her throat gently. Aubrey, they really are waiting. Aubrey nodded. She picked up both pages. The clean speech, the old letter, 2 stories. One polished, one true. She turned toward the door, then stopped. "Dad," she said without looking back, "if I walk out there and tell the truth, will you stand up and correct me if I leave something out?" I almost smiled. There was my daughter, still negotiating with fear. "No," I said. "I will sit down and listen, but do not make me a liar twice." She nodded. Then she walked out of the archive room. We followed slowly, not as a parade, not as a trial, more like people walking behind a truth to see whether it would survive the lights. The community room had filled while we were gone. Students sat with folders on their laps. Parents held pens. Volunteers stood near the walls. Ellis slipped into a front row chair, suddenly much less eager to offer commentary. Aubrey approached the podium. The microphone waited. So did the room. She placed her folder down. Then she placed the yellow envelope beside it. A murmur moved through the audience. Wyatt stood near the side wall, the old speech page still in his hand. Miriam stood by the archive doorway. I took a seat in the back row, near the used test prep books. That felt right. I had spent most of my life at the back of rooms, helping other people find the front. Aubrey looked out at the audience, then down at the first page of her speech. For a few seconds, I thought pride would win again. I thought she would smile, straighten her shoulders, and sell the clean version one more time because clean lies are easier to handle than messy gratitude. Then she looked at Wyatt. That changed her. Not me, not Miriam, her son. The boy who had repeated her shame in public and now stood holding the evidence of what it had done to him. Aubrey took a breath. "When I was 18, she began, "I believed no one was coming to save me." My chest tightened. That was the old speech. Then she stopped. She looked down at the page. Her hand moved. Slowly, she folded it in half, then again, and set it aside. "That is what I planned to say tonight," she said, "but it would not be true." The room went still. Aubrey walked toward the podium with 2 stories in her hands, and for the first time that night, even she did not know which one she was brave enough to tell. "That is what I planned to say tonight," Aubrey said. "But it would not be true." The community room did not move. Students sat with half-filled worksheets on their laps. Parents held pens over scholarship packets. Volunteers stood along the wall, unsure whether they were witnessing a speech, an apology, or the beginning of something nobody had planned. I sat in the back row near the used test prep books. That felt right. For most of my life, I had been somewhere near the back of a room, making sure paper did not jam, forms were printed, and somebody younger had what they needed to step forward. Aubrey looked down at the yellow envelope beside her folder. Then she looked at Wyatt. "When I was 18, she said, "I was ashamed of being poor." A few people lowered their eyes, not out of judgment, recognition. Poverty has a way of sitting quietly in public rooms, pretending it does not know anyone there. Aubrey continued, "I was ashamed that I needed help with forms other students seemed to understand. I was ashamed that application fees scared me. I was ashamed that my father had to drive me here after working all day because I did not know how to start." Her voice shook, but she did not stop. "My father, Connor Abraham, did not write my essays. He did not earn my grades. He did not live my life for me." She looked at me. "But he opened the first door." The old blue library card rested in my palm. I did not realize I was holding it until the plastic edge pressed into my skin. Aubrey took a breath. "He sold his old pickup and told me the engine was bad. It wasn't. He used that money for application fees, used textbooks, a testing fee, and a bus pass." Wyatt's head dropped. Sienna stood near the donor table with her arms crossed, face tight. She was not angry in a loud way. She was angry the way image people get angry when truth refuses to be styled. Aubrey kept going. "He gave up a certification program he wanted in Canada. He stayed late at the print shop to run copies. He sat beside me in this library until I stopped being afraid of the forms. The room was painfully quiet now. No one checked a phone, no one shifted papers. Even Ellis Benton looked smaller in his chair. Aubrey touched the yellow envelope. Earlier tonight, my son called him a liar because I let him believe my father exaggerated the help he gave me. She swallowed hard. That was wrong. Wyatt looked up. Aubrey's eyes filled. Not just inaccurate, wrong. That word mattered. Some people apologize by softening the thing until it disappears. Aubrey named it. I built a career helping families shape opportunities, she said, but I also shaped my own story until it made me look stronger and made my father look like a man begging for credit. She closed her eyes once. When the truth is, I was scared people would respect me less if they knew how much help I needed. Miriam Phelps stepped beside the podium. She did not take over. She simply stood there with the letter in her hands, like a keeper of the room's memory. Aubrey nodded to her. Miriam unfolded the page carefully and read only one part. Dad, if I ever act like I did this alone, please forgive me. I only say that when I'm scared, people will know how poor we were. She stopped there. Enough. A good librarian knows when a paragraph has done its work. The silence after that line was not empty. It was full of people remembering the hands that helped them survive years they later called independence. Darlene Moss wiped under one eye and pretended she was adjusting her glasses. A student in the second row looked at her mother. A father near the aisle stared down at his work boots. Then Aubrey stepped back from the microphone. Dad, she said, would you say something? I did not want to. Every old instinct in me said, stay seated. Let the room move on. Do not make yourself the center. But Miriam looked at me. So did Wyatt. And sometimes dignity is not restored when someone praises you. Sometimes it is restored when you stop hiding from your own place in the story. I stood slowly. My knees reminded me I was 63. The room waited while I walked to the podium. I placed the old blue library card beside the yellow envelope. 2 small things. A card, a letter. Not much to look at. Enough to correct 30 years. I looked at Wyatt first, then at the students. I did not keep receipts because I wanted anyone to owe me, I said. I kept pieces of that time because some memories are too important to throw away. My voice stayed calm, mostly. Help is not shameful. Needing help is not failure. A form can scare a smart person. A fee can stop a brave person. A closed door can make a good student believe the future was built for someone else. Lena Ortiz sat at table 3, eyes wide. I gave her a small nod. No one applies alone, I said. Someone always holds the door, even if history forgets their hand. That was the sentence. I felt it leave me and settle in the room. Not like revenge, like release. Wyatt walked toward the podium then. His face was red. His eyes were wet. He stopped in front of me, and for once, he did not look clever, cold, or certain. He looked 16. Grandpa, he said, I'm sorry. I looked at him. Do you know what you're sorry for? He nodded, but I waited. Some apologies need words, or they stay fog. I'm sorry for calling you a liar, he said. And I'm sorry I believed a story because it made me feel smarter than you. That one hurt, but it was honest. I put my hand on his shoulder. Not a full embrace, not yet. The moment deserved weight. Then don't waste the lesson, I said. He nodded again. Behind him, Aubrey was crying quietly. I did not go to her right away. That may sound cold. It wasn't. It was boundary. Love without boundary is how lies learn to live indoors. Aubrey returned to the microphone. I will not use the speech I brought tonight, she said. And I will not teach students that needing help is something to erase after they succeed. She looked at Darlene. If the library will allow it, I would like to offer one free application workshop each month. No branding, no consulting pitch, just help. Darlene nodded before Aubrey finished. Yes. Ellis Benton cleared his throat. For one terrible second, I thought he might say something polished and useless. Instead, he said, "If the library runs that program, I'll cover the first printing costs." Miriam looked at him. Printing and folders. Ellis blinked, then nodded. And folders. That almost made me smile. Not because he became a hero. He did not. But a man who had mocked memory now had to pay for paper. There are small kinds of justice that fit nicely in a library. The room began to clap. Soft at first, then steady. I did not hear victory in it. I heard relief. I heard discomfort. I heard people realizing that many of us have been calling ourselves self-made while standing on bridges somebody else quietly built. Aubrey stepped down from the podium. She came to me slowly. "Dad," she said. I looked at her. "I'm sorry." "I believe you are," I said. Her face trembled. "But sorry is not the same as repaired." "I know." "Good," I said. "Then start repairing." Wyatt stood beside us, holding the old speech page folded in his hand. He looked at it once, then tore it in half. Not dramatically. Just enough. Aubrey watched him do it. That was the cost she had not seen coming. Not losing clients, not losing applause, losing the version of herself her son had trusted. Miriam picked up the yellow envelope and slid the letter back inside. She handed it to Aubrey. "No," Aubrey whispered. "Give it to Dad." Miriam looked at me. I shook my head. "Keep it at the library," I said. Not as evidence against her, as a reminder for anyone who forgets. Miriam smiled faintly. "Paper is good at that." Later, people returned to their forms. Awkwardly at first, then sincerely. Aubrey sat at table 4 with a student whose mother did not speak much English. Wyatt helped Lena organize her essay notes. Ellis signed a check near Darlene's desk, looking like it hurt less than admitting he had been wrong. I sat back down near the used test prep books. The old blue library card was still in my hand. But it felt different now. For years, it had been a little piece of a daughter I missed. That night, it became something else. Not proof that I had been right. Proof that help, when remembered honestly, can stop a lie from becoming a family tradition. The room applauded softly, but I did not hear victory in it. I heard something harder. A family learning how much truth costs after lying became convenient. 3 weeks after scholarship night, the library put up a new shelf near the back windows. Nothing fancy, just one wooden shelf with a small printed sign taped above it. Abraham. No one applies alone scholarship shelf. I told Miriam the name was too much. She said, "Connor, for once in your life, let paper do something besides hide you." So I let it stay. That shelf started small. A box of yellow folders. Used. SAT and ACT books. Essay. Those checklists. Community college brochures. Printing vouchers. Ellis Benton paid for after learning embarrassment was cheaper than integrity. Bus pass cards donated by a church group. And one framed copy of Aubrey's old blue library card. Not the letter. That stayed in the community memory box, where it belonged. Aubrey changed after that night, not all at once. People do not become honest permanently because one room claps. Real change is quieter, slower, less cinematic. She lost a few clients after she corrected her website and removed the line about being entirely self-made. One parent emailed her and said her story had become too personal. Aubrey showed me the message. I said, maybe they needed a consultant more than they needed a human being. She almost smiled. Then she said, I deserved that. No, I told her. You deserved the truth. What you do with it is on you. She began coming to the library once a month for the free application workshop. At first, she still dressed like she was presenting to donors. Cream blazer, perfect folder. professional smile. But then a girl named Lena told her, "I feel stupid because I don't know how FAFSA works." Aubrey stopped typing. She looked at that girl for a long second. Then she said, "You are not stupid. Forms are built to scare people. That is why we do them together." I heard it from the next table. And I thought, there she is, not fixed, but returning. Wyatt came back too. The first Saturday, he brought 2 coffees and a paper bag of muffins. "Do you still need volunteers?" he asked. I looked over my glasses. "Depends. Can you alphabetize without making it a personal tragedy?" He laughed. Small laugh, nervous laugh, but real. Later that afternoon, he helped a younger student create an email address for a scholarship account. The boy kept apologizing for asking questions. Wyatt said, "Don't apologize. My grandpa says no one applies alone." I pretended not to hear. Old men deserve a little dignity with their tears. Aubrey and I are not magically healed. I want to be clear about that. She still gets quiet when the old days come up. I still feel that night when I remember my grandson's voice calling me a liar. Forgiveness is not a light switch. It is more like returning a book with damaged pages and deciding whether it can still be read. But the lie stopped. That matters. Wyatt knows now that needing help does not make someone weak. Aubrey knows now that being helped does not erase what she earned. And I know now that silence is not always kindness. Sometimes silence protects the person who lied and leaves the child to inherit the lie. I stayed quiet because I thought love did not need receipts. I was wrong. Sometimes receipts are the only thing that saves a child from inheriting a lie. A few months later, Miriam placed a fresh stack of yellow folders on the shelf. On the front of each one, she printed a line in small black letters. "No one applies alone." I ran my fingers over those words. A lie can live a long time in a family, but paper has a patient kind of courage. And sometimes, all it takes to save the next generation is one yellow envelope someone was brave enough not to throw away. I did not get my years back, but I got my grandson back from a lie. And sometimes, at my age, that is enough justice for one heart to carry. Thank you for spending this time with me today, and for listening to this memory all the way through. Please tell me in the comments where you are watching from, and what time it is where you live right now. If this story moved you even a little, please don't forget to subscribe to Final Act Revenge. Another story is waiting for you on your screen right now. YouTube believes you may enjoy it. So please take care of your health, drink some water, and enjoy the next one.